Greetings fellow gorehounds and welcome back to another Blood Splattered vlog. So I just got back from watching Baby Driver, the latest movie from writer-director Edgar Wright, who is one of my favorite filmmakers that's emerged from the last 20 years. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End are fucking classics as far as I'm concerned. And even though I didn't connect with Scott Pilgrim the way a whole bunch of other people did, it's still a pretty well-made movie despite my misgivings. So naturally, I was super excited for Baby Driver despite the fact that its initial American trailer wasn't that great, though the international trailer was fucking fantastic. And ultimately, so is the final movie. The movie is fucking great. In fact, great might be underselling it. This is a true masterpiece of a film. And by that I mean every single detail from start to finish in this film is meticulously chosen and 100% deliberate. There is nothing in this movie that's here by mistake or happenstance. For example, the action scenes, the choreography of them, and the editing of them is synced up to the music, and all the music choices are synced up thematically with what's happening in the scenes themselves. And it's not even done in a music video sort of way. This is very much an action movie, it's just that everything within the movie feels like this dance. Everything syncs up perfectly, and everything set up in the beginning comes back in the end. And sometimes even the background details, like little things written on the walls in scenes, is very important. They sometimes give you little insights onto who a character is, and sometimes what's secretly brewing underneath the surface. Now, as far as the story's concerned, it's actually a very simple story told incredibly well. You have this kid with exceptional driving skills who gets wrapped up in this crime thing, where he's basically being forced to drive these criminals on all these crime sprees, and he does this under duress. If he doesn't do it, he will either be killed or someone he loves will. And he absolutely doesn't like that the fact that they have to rob these places leads to people getting shot and killed. But what is he supposed to do? He has no choice. And the rest of the movie is him trying to get out of this situation and things going incredibly wrong. As well as him meeting this girl and falling in love with her, but of course that will also tie in with things going wrong. So what this movie ultimately is it's Edgar Wright's version of a chase movie. If Shaun of the Dead was homaging Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead, then Baby Driver is homaging movies like Bullet, movies like The French Connection, or even movies like Vanishing Point. And it's all done really fucking well, and the car chases in this movie are fucking phenomenal. Like, this movie has some of the best car chases I've seen since Vanishing Point. And that's pretty fucking high praise, because not even Death Proof 100% reached that level. And if you know me, I fucking love Death Proof. Anyway, yeah, Baby Driver has a little bit of everything. It's got romance, it's got action, it's got incredible comedy. It's fucking hilarious from start to finish. And its soundtrack might actually beat Guardians of the Galaxy 2's soundtrack, and that's saying a lot because I love that soundtrack. And speaking of which, if you look in my description below, I will include an Amazon affiliate link to the Baby Driver official movie soundtrack. So if you liked any of the music in the movie and you want to help me out, then go down there and buy it for yourself. And with that all said, my fellow gorehounds, let us move on to the spoilers. So right away, the movie opens up with a heist immediately in progress, which introduces us not only to Baby, but also to some of the rest of the crew, including Buddy and his girlfriend Darling, with Buddy played by the madman himself, Jon Hamm. And this scene establishes how these heists work. Essentially, you have the crew that goes in and busts shit up, where Baby will be waiting for them in the car with it all revved up and ready to go. And on top of that, Baby will have some sort of fast-paced song playing when they get in the car, with the song itself being kind of the rhythm of how Baby's gonna outmaneuver the police. Because like I said, everything in this movie is synced up to the soundtrack, so when Baby will shift gears, it'll sync up to something that happens in the song. Now after this scene, when they get away, we get a more proper introduction to Baby as a person. And this is done very similar to the scene in Shaun of the Dead where he wakes up and is walking through the town and it's all been zombified. But in this case, it's Baby walking through the streets of whatever city this is set in, with the ultimate goal to get a cup of coffee for him and the rest of the crew. But while he's doing this, he's dancing, he's maneuvering through people, he's all synced up with the music, and spray painted and sometimes carved into the walls or the street signs are the lyrics to the song. So he's walking by in-universe representations of the actual soundtrack. It's pretty crazy. And it's probably the one scene in the movie that felt the most Scott Pilgrim. So anyway, he delivers his cup of coffee to the crew, he gets his cut of the money, but wait, hold on, Kevin Spacey's character, Doc, it turns out the reason why Baby is doing all this is because he owes Doc a shit ton of money. Because apparently when he was a teenager, he boosted Doc's car and it had a lot of expensive products in it, and he had no idea that Doc was this crime lord guy, but Doc was so impressed by him and his driving skills he decided to put him to work instead of killing him. But we find out that he actually has one more job to do before paying off all his debt to Doc. So he gives his take to Doc, and Doc gives him a sliver of the money, and then he goes off on his own, where we're introduced to his foster dad, who is actually a guy stuck in a wheelchair and is deaf. And this is when we find out that Baby is actually an orphan and that his mom and dad died in a car wreck. And this is why Baby is always wearing earbuds, because he's always listening to music to drown out this hum in his head. Essentially, he has tetanitis ever since this car wreck. But on top of that, it also turns out he has a tape recorder that he carries on him at all times. And he's always recording conversations that happen within his life and then turning them into essentially songs when he gets home. He remixes the conversations and essentially turns them into his own little mixtape. It's actually pretty cool, and you kind of get the impression that at one point he wanted to be a DJ. But instead, because he met Doc, he got stuck in this other business. This very dangerous business that his foster father wants him to leave, but he knows he has no choice. And as you can see, despite it being a simple story, you have a whole bunch of complicated interconnecting people here. And the funny thing is, a majority of this information isn't delivered through dialogue, it's all shown to you, it's not told. And as a result of that, it doesn't feel like all this stuff is really complicated at all, it actually feels very simple. And that just shows you what a great writer and what a great director Edgar Wright is. So anyway, Baby meets this one girl at this diner named Deborah and ends up falling for her pretty hard. They have this adorable conversation about names and songs, like he tells her about songs with the word Deborah in it, and she recommends a song that has the word baby in it, and he goes home and listens to it. And there's this great moment where his stepfather, who obviously wasn't deaf his whole life, figures out what the song is. And because he can tell it's a love song, he looks at his son and is like, who's the girl? And like I said, the movie does a really good job of showing it without telling you. You get it right away. I know I just said that a second ago, but it's just a fucking breath of fresh air. We live in an age where most modern blockbusters are just exposition city. And this movie has very little exposition. In fact, the only exposition really in the movie is when the characters are talking about the heist and what they're gonna do in the heist. But even then, most of the time, we don't actually see the heist, so it's not actually exposition. Because we see all the heists from Baby's point of view inside the car. And the reason why we need to know how the heist is going to be pulled off is because from Baby's point of view, we get to watch as it either goes through well or it fucking fails. So anyway, Baby is called in for what he thinks is going to be his final job so he can finally pay off his debt. And we're introduced to a whole new crew led by one Jamie Foxx playing a character named Bats. And I'm pretty sure the reason why he's called Bats is because he's supposed to be batshit crazy. And he really is, because this character can't walk into a room without fucking killing someone. And here's the thing about Bats. Bats, for whatever reason, does not like Baby. He seems to think that Baby thinks he's better than Bats. Which is actually a complete misinterpretation, because Baby does not think he's better than Bats, he just doesn't want to be there. But Bats can't tell the difference because Bats thinks the worst of everybody. And this leads to them clashing for most of the movie, to the point where you think Bats is going to be the main antagonist, but he's actually not. And hell, it turns out Doc is not the main antagonist either, but I'll get to who the main antagonist is in a few minutes. So anyway, he goes to pull off his final heist, which involves robbing an armored car. And this one goes terribly wrong because of this one military guy that they had not anticipated. But thankfully, Baby still shakes off this military guy who's chasing them, but not before he stops Jamie Foxx's character from shooting and killing the army guy. And this leads to that scene from the trailer where he's like, if you catch feelings, you catch a bullet. But more importantly, because things go so horribly fucking wrong, one of the characters accidentally leaves his shotgun at the scene. And because of this, Doc has the guy killed and stuffed in a trunk, and then has Baby drive the car to the junkyard so it can get scrapped. Which Baby does and absolutely horrifies him. This is definitely one of those low points for him. But it's also mixed in with a high point because, hey, that was my last job. I can walk away now. He throws away his burner phone, he starts listening to happier music, he decides to take the girl from the diner out on a date, and everything's going well. He's falling in love, they're planning a future together. But then Kevin Spacey's Doc shows up and is like, hey, did you think that was your final job just because you don't owe me anymore? Nah, you're gonna keep driving for me, and this time you get to keep your take. But if you decide to walk away right now, I'm gonna break your legs, I'm gonna kill that girl in there, and probably kill your stepfather. And this is a good example of what I mean when the music is also synced up thematically with what's happening in the movie. Because after Baby has no choice but to accept this job, he ends up meeting the new crew, which is actually a combination of the old crews. This time he ends up working with Buddy, Darling, and Bats. There's this great music cue where he's in the car with this crew and Nowhere to Run to Baby is playing. Nowhere to run to, baby. Nowhere to hide. Which is pretty apt because Baby can't run away now, and he can't hide. This guy is way too connected. And yes, it's the most on-the-nose music cue in the entire movie, but it's a good example of what I mean when I say that they're thematically relevant. Anyway, after making all these promises to his new girlfriend, he has to kind of cut out on her in order to take this job. And at some point, Doc sends him and the crew out to go get all these weapons for the job. But when they get on the scene to buy the weapons from the dealer, Bats ends up shooting and killing them all. Because he noticed from the acronym on the crate of the box that holds all the weapons that these must be cops. But what he doesn't realize is that while they are cops, they were cops on Doc's payroll. So now they're in a situation where not only do the good cops want to take them down, so do the dirty cops. And needless to say, this pisses Doc off a shit ton. But after the shootout, and before they find out about the cops on Doc's payroll, they're driving along on the road and Bats gets really hungry and asks to stop at this diner. And it happens to be the diner that Deborah works at. And this is when Deborah finds out the hard way that Baby is caught up in something extremely dangerous. But Baby pretends to not know her in order to keep her safe, but then that leads to Bats going to kill her instead of paying the bill, and Baby, in a moment of pure fucking badassery, grabs the gun from Bats' hand and doesn't let him go. Which kind of gives the rest of the crew the impression that, oh, this guy cares about this diner person for some reason. But before they go, there's this heated interaction between Bats and Buddy. Now these two don't like each other. Bats is fucking crazy and keeps getting them into more and more trouble. And on top of that, he keeps oogling Darling, which really fucking sets Buddy off. So naturally, these two are at odds. But we also find out through Darling that Buddy is not someone you want to fuck with. Basically, Darling is like a bull. Once he sees red, he's not gonna stop until you're dead. And remember that see red part, because that will become important later on. So anyway, they get back to Doc's place. Doc is pissed off because they killed his police contacts, and he wants to cancel the job as a result of this, but he ends up giving Baby the choice whether or not they're gonna do it. And so naturally, Baby's in a really terrible position now, so he decides he's gonna do the job, he's gonna prove himself to these people so they don't kill him or his loved one or his stepfather. So the next day, they accept the job. They're essentially robbing from the United States Postal Service. But while the job is taking place, he sees one of the tellers that he saw when he scoped out the place in a previous scene, and he gives him this look like, don't go inside, you're gonna be in danger. So the girl, understandably a little freaked out, turns around and runs to security, but once the security guard arrives, that's when Bats shows up and fucking kills the security guard. The crew all jumps in the car and they're looking at Baby, telling him to drive, we gotta get away. But Baby is staring at the dead body of the dead security guard and it's like, enough is enough. He sees this truck in front of him and there's these poles sticking out of the back of the truck. So he accelerates to full speed and ends up slamming into the back of the truck with the fucking poles going right through Bats in the passenger seat, effectively killing him fucking dead. And Buddy and Darling are now fucking pissed. What the fuck are you doing? You just destroyed our escape vehicle and you killed one of our partners. Long story short, one of the best chase sequences in the history of cinema takes place. And it ultimately culminates in Darling getting shot and killed by the police and Buddy going fucking apeshit. And this right here is where it's revealed who the true antagonist of the movie is. It's not Bats, it's not Doc, it is 100% Buddy. And now he's officially reached the point where he's seeing red. And this is shown to us through the audience by him stealing a cop car, and inside the cop car it's all lit red. So he's all clad in red while he's trying to chase down Baby like a fucking Terminator. And I'm gonna stop the spoilers right here and let you find out how this movie culminates for yourself. But needless to say, you're gonna wanna watch every fucking second of this movie because it's 100% satisfying where it goes. And it's one of the best fucking movies I've seen all goddamn year. So go out there and watch Baby Driver. See it in fucking theaters. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. And with that all said, my fellow Gorehounds, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And as I always say, peace out, and I'll catch y'all later. Brought to you in part by a generous donation by the Center for Unease Control.